Good evening, everyone, and welcome to one more webinar in our webinar learning series being offered by the Learning and OD Roundtable. This is Dr. Sujaya Banerjee. I'm the founder of the Learning and OD Roundtable, and I'm delighted at the very overwhelming responses we've been seeing to all of you who want to make the best of the lockdown, of your work from home, and to try and convert that into learn from home. So congratulations for using your time well, and so many repeat registrations. I'm really delighted to see this. I'm going to spend the first couple of minutes to introduce all those who don't know the Learning and OD Roundtable so that you have a context to this organization. The Learning and OD Roundtable is a not-for-profit. It works with the community to be able to build a large group of inquisitive and curious learners. We build capabilities in the space of personal transformation, driving mindset transformations, and helping professionals in the HR OD learning domain to go back and drive learning organizations in their own organization by driving some more transformation. So it's actually a change management forum. It actually helps people develop the right kind of skills and mindsets to be able to drive change. We founded this forum in 2010, and it's really grown large. We're now 22,000 members across five cities. So we operate out of Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Pune, and Hyderabad. So those of you joining in from these cities, you may want to look at how it is that you can join the forum locally. Um, the forum offers masterclasses and debates and discussions. It's a nice, safe place for professionals to be able to learn insights, access thought leadership and research from across the world, learn from best practice from fellow practitioners, and get access to each other's journeys by being able to exchange openly in these forums, both success stories and failure stories. Increasingly, the last couple of years, we've been inviting people from outside the HR learning OD community, people from corporate communications, to finance, from marketing, from operations, to also become part of this change management forum. So if you're not from HR learning OD, I still invite you to join the growing community of change managers. This is going to be the most lasting capability that's going to hold you in good stead, even given what we've experienced in the last 1 month. The Governing Council is the wind below the wings of this very interesting and growing community. You perhaps would recognize some of the faces there. We have Dr. Akhil Basra. He's based out of Delhi, was twice the national president of National HRD Network. We've got Adil Malia, who runs the firm, used to be the president HR of SR Group. Srinivas Venkatram, who runs Illumine Labs. Rajesh Padmanabhan, the CHRO of Wellspun. Myself, I am the founder of Capstone People Consulting. Manu Wadhwa, who's the CHRO of Sony Pictures. Rajeshwar Upadhyay, who runs the Academy of Applied Emotional Intelligence, and also is the director of Power Excellence and visiting faculty to the Indian School of Business. Prince Augustine of Mahindra Group, and Rajesh Kamath, who's also the founder of Chanakya Consulting. So lots of very interesting people who've come together to enable this forum to grow in the manner in which it has, to be able to cater something important for this community. I'm going to move forward to tell you about the forums that exist across your cities. And for those of you who don't belong to these 5 cities, you can access the forum now increasingly virtually. So do reach out to Prudel or to Tehseen, through whom you made your registrations, should you want to become a member of this growing forum. We've got some very interesting membership options if you want to join. If you're a consultant, if you're a researcher, you're an academician, you get special discounts to join this forum. If you're a practitioner in a corporate and you want an individual access to the membership offerings, this is very reasonably priced. And for those who want to come in on board as corporate members, you have rotating 10 memberships that you can actually get for a very reasonable price. So I recommend strongly that you come in as corporate members or as individual members. At the end of this webinar, you may want to contact Prudel or Tehseen should you want to enroll as members. We also have the Women Leadership Forum of Asia, which is a subset of the Academy of the LNOD Roundtable. the LNOD Roundtable Academy offers, it offers calendar programs and offers other kinds of leadership development programs. Please reach out to them for more details on this. This is one important announcement that I wanted to make, which is we carry out research studies annually. The best diversity and inclusion practices of Asia study is the study we announced recently. We've extended the timelines to the end of April. So those of you on the line, believe you have great practices, diversity inclusion practices within your organization, please participate. We have 13 categories in which we're inviting participation. The downtime, the lockdown is a great opportunity for you to use this time well to be able to document your practices and participate in the best diversity and inclusion practice of Asia study. Again, reach out to both Prudel, Tehseen, should you want to know more about it. We can also offer you assistance to write out your entries. Should you not have enough help or not be confident about being able to document it, we've got a fabulous international jury that is evaluating this. And on the other side of the lockdown, hopefully we will announce the dates of the seminar, where if you merit an award, you'll be invited to be able to come in and share your best practices as a speaker, along with world thought leaders in the space of diversity and inclusion. So with that, I've largely taken you through the announcements I wanted to make as on behalf of the Learning and OD Roundtable. We're now on to the webinar for today, which is Challenging Times and what we can learn from this, the PESTEL Impact of COVID. We've been wanting to, for a while, talk about the challenge that we're all, the unprecedented challenge that we're all experiencing at this time. And I know that even as we tried learning from ancient wisdom tradition, or we tried looking at managing a change for the future, or we also explored transformational leadership yesterday. I think the question that looms large for most of us are questions around business survival on the other side, business continuity related challenges, and a more sort of holistic picture of making sense of this very, very unprecedented times that we're all experiencing together. And while our communication around leveraging this adversity well, it remains, we wanted to bring in someone who's multifaceted to be able to look at PESTEL in perspective in the context of the very challenging times that everyone's experiencing together. I'm delighted to present to you Professor Hariharan, who's Director of Savoir-Faire Management Services and has been a teacher of strategy. His background is he's a CA and a cost and management accountant. He's also certified in design thinking from MIT Sloan. Professor Hariharan, and I've had the privilege and honor of having worked with him in the past, is absolutely brilliant with his clients. He works with across industries, steel, cement, infrastructure, and the rest. He has also, not surprisingly, pioneered several models and tools. Some of them are listed here on the screen. He very actively and passionately teaches people, is a very, very gifted teacher and influencer. He's a prolific writer and speaker, as you will experience, brings in huge amount of enthusiasm with his perspective and has a great way of being able to combine rationale with great levels of creativity. So I think you're going to see some of that in action today. I'm going to, with that, have the pleasure of handing over to Professor Hariharan. But even as he switches over, some housekeeping announcements for everyone, just so that we can get through the next 45 minutes and truly enjoy the insights that Professor Hariharan so meaningfully brings forth. Please ensure that your videos and your mics are on mute so that we don't bring in any noise into this. Also feel free to use your chat box on the right. And in fact, I encourage you to use this chat box by being able to post your insights, your learnings, what you're taking away as the session's progressing. We'd be delighted to refer to that as we go along. Also, please post your questions so that Professor Hariharan is able to answer some of them at the end of this session. So with that, I'm delighted and very honored to hand over to Professor Hariharan.
Good evening. I hope all of you can hear me now. Okay.
Yes, Professor Hariharan, you're very audible. Please go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sujaya, for that lovely introduction. And indeed, it's tough times, but it won't last anyway. So what we have got is primarily, is more like a crystal ball gazing is what I'm going to do, of looking at the current times and how is it going to impact that 6 aspects of PESTEL: political, environmental, social, technological, economic, and legal aspect, and how that in turn is going to impact the business. So let me try to graze the crystal ball and see how is it going to be. But before we go further, go on, we have to necessarily brace for the occasion to say that uncertainty is definitely going to be the way of life. Some of you might have seen this particular movie, Contagion. I think it got released a couple of days back also. This is the last scene of the movie. I'll just start with that. The truck is moving, felling trees. Can disturb the bats there. Bats fly away. The bat eats a banana, flies to a pig farm, and accidentally drops that half-eaten banana. A pig eats it, and the farm sorts the pigs. And this pig is packed and sent to a customer. Turns out to be a hotel. The chef is working on the pig. Halfway through, somebody comes and tells him somebody is there to meet him. So he just wipes, goes and meets her, and she picks up a virus from him. And that's the day one of Contagion. Chinese wet market has started yesterday. So we can't say that this particular thing is going to be a pass. It's definitely going to happen again and again. And more it happens, it sounds more like theory of uncertainty, the butterfly effect. Butterfly flutters, maybe a bat is fluttering, or he ate a pangolin. We don't know what happened, but this is going to be definitely not going to stop. I'm not talking about COVID-19. I'm talking about this uncertainty is going to be there forever. Nobody thought we are all going to be sitting at home for this 21 days. Nobody thought we are going to be totally wondering what is going to happen 2 months down the line. But is it gloom all around? I don't think so exactly, because I've been experiencing this for the last 30 years of being on my own. So I don't think that uncertainty is going to be something we have to really be worried about beyond a level. So let us look at, in perspective, how do we look at this uncertainty? The way we are handling uncertainty reminds me of this Greek paradox, Protagoras paradox. Protagoras is a sophist. Sophist is primarily somebody who is going to sell his knowledge for money, which many people like Aristotle or Plato were against, but he was the topmost sophist. So he was offering to one of the guys called Eutychus that I will teach you law, you learn it from me, you don't have to pay me now, you pay me after you win the first case. So Eutychus was very happy. So he paid, he didn't pay, he learned everything, but he never pursued anything relating to taking up a case or appearing in a court. Protagoras got pretty annoyed with him. So he went and filed a case against him. So Protagoras thought, if I win the case, that means Eutychus has to pay me. If I lose the case, then even then Eutychus has to pay me, because he has to pay me when he wins the first case. Eutychus thought, if I win the case, that means the court has told me not to pay, so I will not pay. If I lose the case, I don't have to pay Protagoras, because anyway I lost the case, I have not won the case. This particular case is debated across for so many generations now in law colleges even today. There is no specific answer for this. We have a similar dilemma. Should we allow a few people to die and continue the business as usual? Or should I completely knock down or lock down and then wait for the whole revival to happen before we start the whole thing? Ethically, I fall on the other side to say that let us live first and then we will go ahead further. But there are some people who think it's not like that. Whichever way, the way it is being handled by different governments, be it at the global level, be it at the central level, or state level, or at the local governance level, is definitely much, much different. Okay, so how does this particular situation therefore pans out? Has to be understood in the context of PESTEL. PESTEL is a very, very popular model. Okay. There's a quote from a recent vacancy report of March 2020. You can read it yourself. If we do not stop the virus, many people will die. If our attempts to stop the pandemic severely damage our economies, it is hard to envision how there will not be even more suffering ahead. This is a dilemma. Typical Protagoras paradox is what we have right now. So I'm classifying this as BC to AD. BC is before Corona. But what is AD? I've got three perspectives of AD. It may be a disturbance, it may be a destruction, or it may be a devastation. It purely depends upon the time and the space. Time meaning how long this continues, space meaning in which country, the way it is being handled. So whether it is a disturbance or destruction or devastation, one thing is sure, for every one of us in this webinar, it is not in our control. So if something is not in our control, we have to essentially think about how do we live with that. Okay, so let us look at how this may impact or will impact PESTEL. PESTEL typically are 6 aspects: political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. This model is developed by a Professor Narayanan. I don't remember from which university, never mind. But he developed this model quite a few years back. Pretty popular model, which talks about the 6 dimensions of external factors which impact the business. When you prepare a SWOT analysis, normally opportunities and threats emerge from the PESTEL. But if you look at the animation, what I've done, I consciously made the animation such a way that they are all coming from a central point. Here the central point is COVID, and they are iterative, they're interactive as well. So it is not, they are not watertight compartment. There can be overlaps across. So how am I going to go about it is, I'm going to look at each of these aspects and see how politically COVID will impact and how that impact is going to in turn impact our own businesses. So impact on the political landscape, I have 3 points each for each of this. It purely depends upon who has the will and who handles it better. See, we cannot right now come to a conclusion as to who is handling better. We seem to be doing well in terms of lockdown because the trajectory is not very steep in India, but we can't say whether this is going to be continuing like this. The way it is handled by different state governments, be it Tamil Nadu, be it Punjab, or be it Delhi, or be it Kerala, are absolutely different. So who handles it better, whose method turns out to be better, is what is going to have a big impact on the political landscape of the country and also of the globe as well. Will that old thing of what you call communism versus capitalism, will it again come back? We don't know. We have to wait and see how is it going to happen. But my perspective is, it is going to be more to do with who is going to handle it better, and it is more going to be that individual country and leader specific as well. The second aspect is, I have a definite feeling there will be a big change in the global power equations. Will there be a trust on a few countries? Will we depend on Chinese imports like what we have been doing earlier? Will we be depending on these leaders, specific leaders, or are we going to look at what we call different leadership landscape itself that purely is going to be driven by this particular crisis? There will be definitely changes in global power equations. Who is going to be the bigger player in the world? Who is going to be ruling the roost? Who is going to pull the strings? Is all going to emerge in the process. 3, there may be changes in governance models. A governance model, like something like, if you look at what you call, Bhutan talks about gross happiness index. Will we be moving from gross domestic product to gross happiness index? Will we be moving towards what you call more inclusive growth kind of governance models? Are we going to look at self-sustaining governance models? it will emerge as we go further. Nobody can with certainty say, but I could see these changes happening in the short term and in the medium term and long term also. What these things will impact the business? How do I perceive this to impact the business? The three aspects I look at specifically. Number one, who can be trusted? There may be a possibility. I was talking with my friend Kasi Raman from Oman. He's a CEO of a global major. And he shares a very interesting perspective. He says that there may be more self-reliant and decentralized global supply chains may emerge in the process. Because if you look at, I need to have from farm to plate has to be pretty fast for me. So in fact, there are cases where many factories were suffering in January, February, when Chinese factories were closed in Wuhan. So therefore, there is a possibility we may have to look at decentralized global supply chains where the links by themselves can create the linkages. Number two, there can be changes in the thrust on specific sectors. Maybe the political dispensation may start encouraging people to invest in medical equipment. They may invest, there may be some kind of SOPs coming up in the context of what you call healthcare, okay, hygiene. So these are the thrust which may happen in the future. So there may be some thrust which is moving towards design of what you call rapid prototyping. Those kind of things may happen because of this kind of models. And the impact of the governance models also is not only at the macro level of the organization of the country as a whole, even at the micro level, we may start translating them into that. Okay. What I mean by that here is primarily, Saurav Ganguly or Mike Brearley have become extremely popular lecturers these days. Saurav Ganguly is teaching on leadership. So he is translating what he understood and learned as leadership in the cricket team into an organizational context. Similarly, which governance models are handling things very well may have a higher say in the context of governance models inside the company as well. So I find a lot of changes which is going to happen in the governance models at a micro level in companies as well. Let's move on to the second one, which is the economic. Number one, what kind of recession is this going to be? IMF is telling there's definitely going to be a recession. There's a lovely seminal article written in this month by in HBR by three consultants from BCG, where they classified the recession into three types. This is not their classification. Classification is there for so long, but they put it up very nicely. The three kinds of recessions, what they are looking at is, one is what is called as real recession, where a sudden demand and supply triggered by a specific thing like PESTEL, exogenous demand and supply, can push the real economy into contraction. Contraction meaning we'll start holding our monies. Even now, if you look at it, we are consciously holding back money. The governments have announced we are going to give only 25% or 50% salary for the month of March. Even at the government level, at individual level, at company level, we start counting this, and this can lead to a kind of a contraction. Real recession can definitely be triggered by COVID-19. Second is a policy recession. Policy recession, typically the policy rates, typically the lending rates what we have, are high compared to the economy's neutral rate. Policy rate is what the federal bank announces as a rate. Neutral rate is what typically the economy is, every bank is giving the rate. That tends to be a tighten the financial condition and rate intermediation, and it can choke the expansion because of the very low spreads which we have in the process. Will it lead to policy recession? Doubtful, primarily because it needs, it is more to do with the one-off error which federal banks do. The third kind of recession is a typical financial crisis, where there can be imbalances which tend to build up over a long period of time. Availability versus affordability. For example, cars are available, I can't afford to buy it now. Sanitizers are not available, but whether I afford or not, I buy it as well. So there can be imbalances happening in the short run. It may not contribute to this much because it's more like a blip right now, so long as it's a disturbance. However, there can be a cash flow strains which may lead towards holding back the money later. If these are the three kinds of recession, how the economy can revive? Again, there are three likely paths. Again, I'm going back to the same article of HBR which talks about it beautifully. The three likely recovery paths are three types, what is called as V type, U type, and L type. V type Typically, all these three depends upon the time and space, how long this is going to continue and where it is continuing. V-shaped is where the annual growth rate will fully absorb the shock. Though it seems optimistic, it may be plausible. That's what the three authors are telling. But this article is a very old article. I have to use the word very old article. It was written somewhere in the first week of March. So now if you look at it, this seems to be less plausible because the revival doesn't seem to be happening in a jiffy. The second is U-shape, which is more like a V-shape, but the shock persists. Initial growth path will resume, but the permanent loss of output may happen. But they say at that point of time, we need more evidence. Within bracket, I given my perspective, more evidence is gaining ground now because more and more longevity of this particular thing is happening across countries. Earlier epidemics were not across countries. This epidemic is across countries. Other than if you really look at the Spanish flu of 1980. The third one, which even my opinion also, it is pretty pessimistic and not likely to happen, is structural damage in the supply side, especially because the labor market, if you take the case of Delhi and Kerala, everybody has gone out. Not much in the case of Maharashtra, but they've gone out, capital formation get impacted, productivity can get impacted, then it can be a much longer duration also. These are the typical three kinds of recovery. Likely scenario according to the authors, which is primarily a V-shaped recovery. It will rebound. Any rebound is always going to be higher than the previous one. If you look at it carefully here, the rebound here is definitely improved compared to the other one. The second is U-shaped, which they say plausible, but I believe that this is more possible. A slightly longer duration recession, which will revive after some time. It can revive. There's a potential for that. And the third is L-shaped, where there can be a dip in the demand and dip in the business and dip in the economy itself. Even I think this is unlikely. What they call as plausible, I look at it as likely. Okay, but there's a small good news for us in this case. What is the good news? The good news is all the previous epidemics are all V-shaped. With the Asian flu of 1958, SARS of 2002, or H3N2 of 1968, or the Spanish flu of 1918, everywhere the recovery has been V-shaped recovery only. A little bit in Spanish flu, it dipped, but the overall improvement happened. So maybe we can take solace in this and hope that this is going to be a thing which is going to happen if I am looking at the future. Okay, if that be the case, what is the degree of impact on this? So we saw three things. One is the recession may be real recession. Okay, and the recovery may take a U-shaped recovery, but the degree of impact purely depends upon the space and time. Space meaning where is it happening, how is it being handled, and the time is typically how long it takes to recover. So here I will draw from McKinsey report. Again, a dated report, March 2020. They keep updating it almost every second day these days. And they looked at the whole thing in a 3x3 matrix broadly. On one side, they are looking at the likely impact of the COVID. On the other side, they're looking at the way the knockdown or the government actions are happening. So if you look at the virus spread and public health response, the effectiveness of the public health response, they're looking at two extremes, better and worse. And the other dimension, they're looking at the knock-on effects and economic policy response, effectiveness of government economic policy, better and worse. Now, if you look at this scenario, the three broad possibilities. The worst scenario is broad failure of public health interventions, where it fails miserably. We are not able to control the spread of virus at all for an extended period of time until vaccines are available. We are not able to do anything about it. This is a worst case scenario. Slightly better, effective response, but virus resurges because it is Spanish flu 1918 actually resurged after it went down. So that was a danger which happened in the case of Spanish flu. So it is pretty possible that effective response, if the virus resurges, how is it going to happen, is another aspect we have to really look at it. And the third is primarily a rapid and effective control of virus spread, hopefully, strong public health response, which can succeed in controlling the spread in each country within 2 to 3 months. If I look at it, it's my perspective, it should be done more locally. Like for example, Maharashtra blocking the borders, Assam blocking the borders. So at a state level and at a panchayat level, how we are able to address it makes extremely difficult, extremely crucial, because the problem has to be addressed at the micro level. On the other side, the knock-on effect on economic policy response, one extreme is ineffective interventions, self-reinforcing the recession dynamic, and the recession dynamics kicks in, widespread bankruptcies, credit defaults, potential banking crisis. See, now in Indian context, we are given some kind of an EMI moratorium. There is some kind of what you call delay in payment of GST. There are some kind of what you call payment of lesser salaries in government, and some changes in priorities in government spending. All these things are happening, started happening. Will it be enough? We have to wait and see. And the worst thing in the whole situation is whether it is effective or ineffective, only time can tell. Partially effective interventions, policy responses, maybe a kind of what you call to say that yes, we have necessarily extend the moratorium, waive off some interest portion. So all those stuff is going to be happening, and the banking crisis avoided, recovery levels are muted. And the third possibility, by the effective intervention, very strong policy response, prevent structural damage, recovery of pre-crisis fundamentals and momentum. Okay. And then McKinsey goes on to look at 9 different scenarios. Let us look at this. For that, I have to hide my thing also here. Okay. The first one, what you call as A1, is the middle path where the virus resurges, but the slow long-term growth happens. The world recovery is muted, it slowly happens. Something like a U-shaped is what is likely to happen on an average across the board. But these 9 scenarios need not happen across the globe in the similar way. It can happen differently, this is my opinion. It can happen differently in different economies, different local governances, depending upon how is it getting handled. Second is where it resurges, but I have effective interventions economically I have done, then it is possible to bring back, there can be a strong world rebound. This to a great extent, A1 and A2 seems to be possible in Indian context, in my opinion, especially A1. A3 is where maybe by God's grace, by serendipity or some way or other, the virus has died down, abated. Okay, it's not unabated anymore. And with the partial effective thing, I'm still having U-shape. Maybe slow recovery is going to happen. But if it is coupled with a pretty well effective intervention, we can get into a V-shaped kind of improvement. The fourth possibility is this one. So these 4 areas is what we pray to happen. What are the dangerous areas now? Let us look at that. B1 is definitely dangerous. Ineffective interventions, but the virus gets controlled. Definitely, people are going to be healthy in that sense. Not healthy, people are going to be alive, but long term, there can be a kind of what you call sectoral damage could have happened. B2, where virus resurgence happen, but a pretty slow long-term growth. If you look at that line is much lower than the line of A1. It is almost like an L shape, which is bound to, which may happen. This is a God forbid scenario of absolute L shape. I definitely hope and believe this is not going to happen. B3 is a highly unlikely scenario in my opinion. P4 is also likely, especially if I am not able to public health response is people are not responsible. How do we do about that? That's a much more bigger problem we have. Okay, pandemic escalation happen, slow progression beyond economic recovery. In the final situation, again a U shape, but a recovery is likely to happen. It may effective intervention. So if you look at this, effective response virus resurges is to some extent in our hand. I'm looking at this as one possibility. And in some cases, I'm expecting the partial recovery is bound to happen. Just give me a minute. This is bound to happen. I mean, this one. If this happens, then definitely I am in a better position. I look at that A1, A2 may be a likely recovery what we will be seeing, with a hope that we are able to handle it economically well. If this happens, what is the impact going to be? So type of recession, likely recovery path V or U or L, or the degree of impact depending upon the time and space is going to determine how COVID is going to impact the economy. How that in turn is going to impact us is number one, there can be demand impact, saving versus consumption versus long-term pessimism and long-term pessimism. For example, take our own personal cases. Now we are very cautious in spending money suddenly. What is considered to be a normal outing is no more there. Maybe after 21 days, if you start jumping in and start spending, God save us. But the point here is that the demand impact is going to be, there will be a saving mindset kicking in this process. Whether it is going to be short term or long term, purely depends upon whether we are landing in A1 or A2. I mean A1, A2, the previous slide I'm talking about. Here. Okay. The second possibility is supply impact. Supply impact is disruption and move towards self-reliant sourcing is what I'm expecting. Supply impact is we have totally lost out because our supplies have been choked. Starting from January, even in the case of February also, our supplies from China has stopped many of the companies. Some companies will suspend operations because of that. So maybe we'll be moving towards more self-reliant sourcing, which is bound to happen, I think. This can be an impact on COVID on our businesses. We have to look at options of self-reliance. And third, there may be changes in areas of investment within the business. Something suddenly we start looking at something like a luxury. For example, suddenly everybody is having work from home. In fact, work from home is more work at home. You have more work at home than work from home. So in that context, if we start looking at it, maybe when that becomes a reality, will I invest in maybe my technology investment may happen definitely much more now. Less contact points is what I will try to create. So these economic changes can lead towards changes in areas of investment within the business. Maybe more R&D thrust in some specific sectors can happen. Technology thrust is definitely going to happen post this. Okay, PESTEL, the third aspect is social. The social aspect, if you look at it, there are three impacts which I'm expecting in the society. Number one, there will be some changes in lifestyle. But again, it purely depends upon how is it going to be. Okay, for example, whenever we go to cremation ground and come back, our mood is very sober. You say that, oh, ultimately life boils down to a handful of ashes, right? I think we have to be good enough from tomorrow onwards. From next day, we are good enough. But the third day, we go back. So whether this COVID changes is going to change in lifestyle is going to continue or not continue, we don't know. Okay, so but there's a definite potential for changes in lifestyle which may happen in quite a bit of the society itself. In terms of what you call not only lifestyle in the context of our habits, it's also in terms of the way we meet people, way we interact with people, and the way we use social media. So many things are going to change in this context. Maybe our changes in priority is bound to happen. Suddenly I personally discovered people at home are pretty good people. I didn't know that before. So the same thing many of us may be discovering also. Oh, we got a lot of good people at home. So maybe we were not spent that much time at home to realize that even for so long. Maybe some changes in priority may happen, may kick in this process, which is quite possible. Third, changes in investment outlook. Now everybody has made a big loss in share market. And many have done distress selling like the European and American investors sold ultimately to the Chinese government. But in some cases in India also, some of them are opted out of mutual funds, some have opted out of what you call sold off. But some people stay invested. But the investment outlook, now should I invest in what you call landed property? Should I invest in mutual funds? Should I invest in safe bet like a FD? That's all going to change because the way we look at money is undergoing a change now. Okay, all these things, how is it going to impact the business? Number one, there will be a change in work-life balance. Employees are going to expect more time at home as well. It is bound to happen. Or that again depends upon how the home environment is. That's a different issue altogether. But work-life balance may undergo a significant change. Therefore, as a HR professional, people have to think about this aspect going to hit the business in a big way. Number two, obsolescence. I've given a question mark and exclamation for short term and long term because obsolescence in terms of what you call what our priorities and it changes. We suddenly start looking at some of the products what we buy with a different kind of a perspective altogether. For example, the obsolescence in terms of something as simple as a sanitizer. Maybe it may become obsolete after about some months as a product not as much sold as it is being sold now. Or maybe it may turn out to be a product which is going to be there forever. So the habits in terms of what you call washing the hands, washing the legs and everything coming in, definitely water requirements may go up as well, quite possible. So all these things are going to have an impact in the way we run the businesses. So obsolescence in the products, obsolescence in services are bound to happen. Number three, funds availability. As a businessman, am I going to get the funds like I used to get earlier? Don't tell me I was not getting it earlier as well. But the point is, am I going to get the funds available now? Because a saving mindset versus investment mindset. People move more and more towards savings, then it becomes funds available for me to run the business may have a challenge. So my lifestyle changes, priority changes, investment outlook of individuals can have an impact on work-life balance, obsolescence, and funds availability. Then comes T, technology. This is one area I believe that will be a big changes bound to happen. Impact of COVID on technology, number one, rapid prototyping. If you look at carefully, suddenly we find that people are coming up with ventilators faster, people are coming with testing kits faster, people are coming with what you call sanitizers faster, we're able to prototype it faster. So rapid prototyping is impacted in a big way. Technology is impacted by COVID in the context of prototyping. Number two, flexibility in scaling up. Suddenly we find Mahindra manufacturing ventilators. From where the scale came? Suddenly we find a lot of paramedics popping up. From where the scale came? Railway compartments become hospital beds. Flexibility in scaling up. So this is typically kicking in a lot of flexibility in scaling up as well. And third is ease of application. Now, when a testing kit, it is taking about 3 days to get the result. No, I can get the result in 2 hours itself. Ease of application becomes extremely important. In fact, that sanitizer itself came into being somewhere in 90s, I believe, during the Gulf War. When people could not wash their hands with soap, that's where the sanitizer came. Ease of application is the biggest advantage of a sanitizer. As compared to 20 minutes, you keep washing it. Here, we say, use a sanitizer, you use it as long as it is alive. Meaning, its evaporation is done. Ease of application becomes an extremely important aspect of technology. How does it impact the business context? Number one, there will be a big shift towards design thrust. Design is going to definitely become a critical area in the future. Now, I'm not telling because my son is pursuing design. I'm telling this primarily because rapid prototyping has to have a design thrust. Without the design thrust, moving towards prototyping is impossible. So there has to be a shift towards design thrust. And if you look at carefully, people at every level is able to think in this direction at the ground level itself. Two, de-skilling, reskilling, and multi-skilling. We have to essentially invest in de-skilling. De-skilling is primarily, for example, almost everybody is using Zoom these days. Microsoft Teams, extremely difficult to handle. Google Hangout, not a great picture quality. Zoom, as having such a user-friendly option, you can easily discover multiple options here. So this whole thing is de-skill the technology itself. So somebody who is not tech savvy can use Zoom, like me, can use Zoom effectively. So de-skilling is definitely going to be the area we have to focus more. Reskilling is the second area, meaning people have to essentially move towards the concept of what you call design thinking, especially because I need to necessarily scale up faster. I need to bring out products and solutions faster. And that leads to multi-skilling as well. So there will be a big thrust in terms of de-skilling, reskilling, and multi-skilling enabled by technology, which I believe is bound to happen. And third is there will be an increasing need for responsive supply chains going to be there. So when there is an increasing need for responsive supply chain, how fast I am in a position to move from one place to other place. Simplistically put it, for example, you go to a nearby Kirana store, he is already what you call having a responsive supply chain. So when you give a call to him and say, boss, I don't have this, can I come over here? He say, I don't have it, but give me an hour's time, I'll get it for you and keep it in my place. At a very, very local level, we are looking at responsive supply chain. But at a global level, at an organization level, I need to move towards responsive supply chain, how fast I can come from farm to plate, which is very crucial. Technology can enable it much better now. It has proved it very clearly in the current, it is proving in the current crisis very well. Environmental, definite impact. There is a big focus on hygiene. There's a big focus on societal, personal hygiene, societal hygiene, planet hygiene. It can be short to medium term. This focus can improve and impact as well. There will be stringent regulations which will be put on environmental thing. People are going to be much more, assertive about the environmental damages. Okay, in terms of movement, there may be, say, like in the case of Singapore, we talk about different days. You cannot take the vehicle all the days. Some vehicle registrations are only for a few days. Some are only for weekends. So something like this, stringent regulations can kick in pretty fast. Sustainability can become a byword in the future. There will be minimal movement of people is what people are going to insist on. So therefore, the infrastructure is going to be more of a remote access rather than physical access, which is bound to happen. And this impact on environment can have an impact on the business. We'll move more and more towards contact work versus remote working. I'm not using the word contract. Please notice carefully, it is contact work, face-to-face contact work versus remote working. 280 people. I can never imagine I'm going to meet 280 people in a forum like this. So typically the contact work versus remote working is going to be the thing, but there are certain things has to be done physically. So if it has to be done physically, maybe robotics may kick in much more bigger way than what it is now. So if plants are robotic predominantly, I think all of us will be working from home to a great extent. There will be a higher sustainability thrust. My perspective is there may be some things like, maybe the government may come in with something like, we'll have more accelerated deduction in income tax, something like this may happen. And these things can lead towards higher sustainability in the organizational level as well, both at design level and operations level and distribution level as well. And more higher self-reliant models are going to come up. The environment changes are going to lead towards that as well. Finally, legal aspect. There can be travel-related legal aspects can happen. Already it started happening. Restrictions on visa, restrictions on movement. Okay. Like what do you call it? Let's make America strong again. We'll make India hygiene again, or we'll make our life hygienic again. So travel-related legal conditions may kick in. This is my perspective. Definitely, it is possible. Export-related, export-import related legal restrictions may definitely happen. I may end up telling that where it is getting packed, how it is getting packed. Okay, this can definitely have an impact. Labor law related, there will be a lot of labor law related changes may happen in legally. So this on the business is going to be definitely, global trade will get impacted in the context of when I move more and more towards self-reliant models. Contact work, again, I'm coming back to the same point. Contact work is remote working. Therefore, the working time conditions, etc. may undergo a change. Now today we don't have work time at all. Self-reliance is going to be kicked in because of the legal changes. Ultimately, who is going to win? Let me borrow from Darwin. So when you are survival is not going to be by the smartest or the strongest individual or the species. It is by the species which adapt themselves best to the environment. If you look at carefully, India as a country has been adapting to changes extremely well compared to so many other countries. We have gone through multiple ravages. We have gone through multiple invasions. We have gone through multiple atrocities, but still we survived. We hold on to our roots, and therefore we are much more capable of adapting ourselves to the environment than I think many other countries. We will come out of it much stronger. This is my perspective. It is not out of empty optimism. It is coming with a strong perspective that this is the way the country has been for so long. Sometimes the karma philosophy definitely makes a big difference. Karma philosophy makes us more responsible. I am responsible for my own karma. Let me handle it myself. So what are the learnings? There are 3 slides I have. learnings from the forced business practices. The forced business practices, use of technology more effectively. We are forced to use technology now. Even this webinar is an example. Minimal travel, minimal meetings, minimal paperwork, faster communication. Can we translate it? Can we translate learning almost through a kind of a web-based learning, other than a personal one-to-one coaching, keep all the learnings in a web-based approach? Pretty possible, pretty effective as well. Maybe with 3D technology, I can holographically project myself into your house, like in the case of Avengers Endgame. Okay, so I will holographically project myself in your house, and then we can have a conversation as well. So we can use technology, which is bound to happen. Lean supply chains, we see that speed at which people are moving material from farm to plate these days. Okay, in fact, APMC market was closed, but still the market nearby from my house, they managed to get some material from somewhere. They managed to get it. So the provision store managed to go to somewhere where it is available, they bring it faster. So lean supply chains are kicking in the current context. Number 3, rapid prototyping, which you are seeing happening now. Fast development of products. These are all forced business practices, which is happening. We are able to see that IIT Delhi or Bombay, I don't remember, coming up with a sanitizer. You have what you call medical equipments coming up. So rapid prototyping is already happening because forced by COVID-19. Rapid scaling up is happening in terms of skill development, in terms of people movement, in terms of what you call ventilators, in terms of hospital capacities. We are able to scale up faster. Flexibility. We are forced to work in this way, and we are doing it. We are coping up with reasonably well. We are mentally prepared for another 20 days of shutdown also. I think we can become wiser and stronger in that process. Maybe a little bit poorer, but fine, we can recover that later. Flexibility definitely is kicking in a lot. And extremely important, frugality is also coming in. There's a Kabir's doha, a very favorite doha for me. दुख में सुमिरन सब करे, सुख में करे न कोई. जो सुख में सुमिरन करे, दुख है कोई. Now दुख में हम लोग सुमिरन कर रहा है. During these tough times, we are being frugal. I think we have to extend this frugality subsequently as well. Frugality is not being miserly. Frugality is fundamentally having our priorities in the way we are going to spend money. I actually set a stopwatch for myself for 45 minutes. I got another 3 more minutes. I think I'll be winding up in that time. Learnings from life, the way we are running our life today. Personal hygiene, we are having definitely the personal hygiene at home has improved tremendously. Cleaning our home, cleaning our windows, cleaning our washroom, ourselves we are doing it. Being self-reliant in that sense also. I think we can extend that to a better workplace management. 5 years can come back in a much better way now, with hygiene and safety as a primary theme of that. Not simplistically workplace organization. Societal care. Now we are suddenly start looking at, in fact, every day morning I go to buy milk. I make it a point to appreciate the guy who is actually sweeping the locality. So now he knows me very well. Even before I come, he gives a hi to me. The point is, I never even looked at him so far. I never looked at him. I looked at him more like a nuisance in that sense, unfortunately. How much of dust is generating here? But you suddenly start them, you're looking like a Faji now. So can I extend this into inclusive business model? I have to look at how I can make that into an inclusive business model. Environmental care. We are now suddenly started thinking about the environment. We start talking about what we call vegetarianism. We start talking about what we call how to avoid the wet market kind of a thing. Can I extend this to a more eco-sensitive business models? I think there's a big potential. Work-life balance, which suddenly we discover a lot of things at home. Extending that to making jobs less movement needed. We can look at that as a learning from this one. And finally, adapting to changes. Extending that to inculcate flexibility at workplace. Can I extend this into workplace flexibility? Okay, I'll give a very quick example in this case. I was discussing with a guy from Taj quite some years back. The discussion was going on like this. We have this New Year party. During the New Year party, we are not, the people, customers who are working in for New Year party are not the customers who normally come in the other times. Okay. 1 minute. But actually, I make losses in the New Year party. but still I will continue to do the New Year party. That's what that man said. I asked him why. He says, 20 days before the New Year Eve starts, all our people are working together. They are working together for the first time in that sense. Some of them working together for the first time. They learn a lot in terms of interpersonal relationships. So this 20 days I'm spending in preparation for New Year party is actually much more effective for me than any kind of training program I can have for them. He went on further and explained, chefs are very difficult people to handle. If you ask the chef to go for a training program, he will never go for that. But we conduct 1 week of cookery competition week. We call multiple people from all walks of life. We give them 500 rupees nominal entry fee. We give them everything they want to use for cooking. And these chefs are the judges for this. At the end of the whole 1 week, these people go back and change the menu itself. They pick up a lot of things. The point I'm trying to make here is that these two situations are more like a one-off situation. One-off cookery week, one-off New Year Eve party. That particular practice is what I'm getting in there is translating into my business as usual. So adapting to changes, we have to necessarily do it in that context. And finally, be prepared. One good news is everybody has been impacted. We are all in the same boat. Unfortunately, the boat has a hole that everybody knows. See, I think I remember, who said this? I think Robin Williams said this once. Anybody who entered this earth cannot get out alive. No, I'm not a fatalist. The point I'm trying to make here is that let that not become a paranoia. Let us not get paranoid with that. We are all getting impacted. So what is true for the swarm is true for the bee as well. And what is true for the bee is true for the swarm as well. So this has happened during the downturn of world economy. It is time to rebound. COVID-19 may be the trigger there. In fact, now the economy, every economy worldwide is coming down. In this context, COVID may be reviving us better as well. But don't get blindsided by the short-term and even medium-term spikes. It's bound to be there. We have to necessarily get counted like Rahul Dravid. Weather the storm and then we can play better. We can score runs will come, definitely. Look at the scenario as it emerges. Please don't create a rigid plan. You cannot create a plan in the current context. You cannot create a plan in the current context, but have some scenarios, observe the scenarios, and then try to create a flexibility in your planning itself. What do I mean by that? You may be a biker. Suppose if you are a biker goes like this, moving everywhere like this. Is he stable? He is extremely stable. He is stable and therefore he is flexible. Maintain the mental stability, we can definitely be flexible. Be ready for consolidation and growth. V-shaped recovery is plausible, but don't be complacent. This is a point made by the HBR article. So I just given the citation for that. Don't assume that V-shape is going to be there. My perspective, not HBR perspective, my perspective is looks like more U-shaped than V-shaped. Don't be complacent. Be ready to adapt to newer models of business and operations. Be ready for changes that may have impact across time horizons. But it has to be a positive impact. We have to necessarily take it forward. Prepare to continue to be relevant to our customer, people, planet, and investors. Just to conclude, tough times never last, tough people do. With that, I wind up my session. Thank you so much for listening. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Hariharan. I think that's been an absolute joy to listen to you. And I'm sure many people here on the group agree very vehemently with me. You've attracted a very staggering...
Environmental slide, can you flash it again, sir, please?
Sorry?
Somebody has asked the question. I'll just quickly do that for a minute, Sujaya.
Yes, yes.
Go back to the chat questions, what the question is about in that case. Yeah, I will share the materials with them. Flash on the political
Let me
side.
just call out some of the, let me call out some of the questions for you. There's a question here from Venkat Raman, And he's asking, will there be a shift in the kind of businesses that people are going to invest more in, like healthcare, security, and banking, which are still running? Also, more investment in health and life insurance.
See, possible, Venkat, herd mentality is such that, everybody moves towards the same kind of business. But we have to be cautious in this case. Let us understand one thing. There are a couple of few businesses which is going to be always time immemorial, which is always going to be there. Pharmaceutical and healthcare, FMCG and banking. These three things which are going to be banking slightly, I will keep it aside because it's driven by the policy changes also. But these two businesses are perennial businesses. If you're doing your basics and fundamentals correct, you cannot make losses in that. But will everybody get into that and start getting into it? That becomes a herd mentality. That becomes a little bit risky. To put it in perspective, in early 90s, steel was having a demand was more than supply for steel. Everybody started putting in steel. SR, Jindal, Ispat, everybody started putting in steel. I distinctly remember one of my friends, Mr. Soundarajan, was consulting Bilwara Group for putting up steel plant. After spending 80 crores, the grand old man of Bilwara Group said, no, I'm not going to pursue this business at all because everybody is investing. And his perspective turned out to be true because by 1999-2000, everybody was suffering. Till the Chinese Olympics happened, steel could not revive at all. It's bound to happen. For example, early 90s, we found a lot of NBFCs happening everywhere. Financial market boom, post-Rashid Mehta. Then every street corner you find an NBFC. And after about few years, all the NBFCs were in street corner. Then early 2000, we had dot-com boom. All the dot-com became dot-com. Now, if you look at last couple of years, we have startup boom. The starting up companies are only starting up, never growing up. So we have to be careful. There's no doubt healthcare, FMCG are definitely perennial businesses. But do I have the expertise to do that is also very critical. Yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Yes. Professor Hariharan, I'm going to take another one here. This is from
Please.
Ranganathan Ramakrishnan. And he's asking, my question is on the recovery when compared to previous pandemics. One thing that is different now is the impact of globalization, where countries are far more dependent on other countries. Do you still feel it presents a case for a V or a U-shaped recovery?
As I said, HBR article talks about the V-shape, but I strongly believe it is going to be U-shape. Primarily because you're right, the fundamental difference between the previous epidemics or pandemics and now is, other than Spanish flu, most of them were localized. Though it is called Spanish flu, many people died in India at that time. So if you look at, if you let us go back to that particular slide again, slide number 12, I believe. Yes. 12.
Professor,
Yeah. Just a minute.
There's one more question.
Just a minute. If you look at this case, everywhere else there is reasonable V-shape. Other than in the case of Spanish flu, it has actually dipped a little bit in the case of the V also. Though the GDP has gone up, but the rate of growth has actually fallen a little bit. The point is, it is pan-world across geographies. Therefore, I think U-shaped is more possible than in the case of V, in my opinion as well. Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, I had a question for you. I'm calling out Darshan Shah's question. He says that he wants to thank you for an insightful session first.
Thanks, Darshan from LNOD.
Yes, but from a business perspective, which costs should be immediately seized or put on hold?
Come again, which?
From a business perspective, which costs should be immediately seized or put on hold?
Which cost has to be immediately seized or put on hold? Travel. Okay, and see whether we can cover the things remotely as well, as much as possible. In the pure short run, I'm telling, it is forced on us also is a different issue altogether. Travel anyway is forced on us.
All right, we have a question here, which is from Raj Lakshmi Nair, and she's asking, can Mr. Hariharan throw some insights on the challenges HR professionals will have to face post-COVID-19 situation? Will the extreme technological involvement create joblessness even more now?
I cannot answer the question with certainty. Definitely, I don't have a great idea right now. But still, let me attempt to explore or speculate on this one. Number one, there may be a thrust of looking at localization of jobs may happen. But again, it purely depends upon how long this pandemic is going to continue. I like to have my kids with me, kind of a thing, your mindset. Okay, whether, but is it going to be like what they call a smashana vairagam, we say. Well, after going to the, what do you call, crematorium, people come back with the mindset, oh, I have to be good enough. Ultimately, it boils down to ashes. If it is going to be smashana vairagam or is it going to be a long term, I don't know. But maybe there may be a thrust in that. The second aspect, therefore, I may have to getting people from outside to my place. Will it be happening? Because in fact, Italy is supposed to be highly hygienic, but there's a maximum deaths are happening there. Same is okay with New York as well. Maybe we have to rethink at the way we look at what environments as well. But therefore, we may have to look at localized talents. Technologically, yes, people will definitely maybe adapting to technology faster. For example, in fact, if you look at carefully, television sales was supposed to increase tremendously in 1982 when India hosted Asian Games in 1982. But unfortunately and incidentally, the sales went up during the death of Indira Gandhi. Maximum sales spike happened in the month of November 1984. An event like that, a big tree falling, has triggered a big boom in the market of television. The question here is primarily technology adoption may happen faster, and technology need not necessarily render people jobless. We have to look at an inclusive model. That's what I'm talking about. Maybe the typical job of a manufacturing, we move more and more towards robotics, and we have to have supply chain will employ more people in terms of people, because in supply chain, technology plays one definite role, which is primarily information transmission. There are 4 transmissions happen in the case of supply chain. It's a question of value, resources, number 3, information, number 4, money. Money and information can be transferred electronically. Value partially, but material and resources has to be physically moved. So supply chain may get into more human-centric businesses. It's the perspective I have. Yes, I'm through with that answer. I hope it is answered.
All right, great. So one more here. What will happen with the losses in production, especially the auto sector, which is already suffering since the last 2 quarters? So any views on the auto sector?
See, auto sector, for example, this is one sector which actually the bug hits that sector first before any other sector. Because automobile, all said and done, is not an emergency purchase for many people, unless you are a fleet operator. So it is always a postponement which is going to happen there. When my priorities change, I may postpone my vehicle purchase as well. There can definitely be a dip in this, and the production levels may come down. It may not revive, in my opinion, for another 3-4 months at least, if not more. Because people like to consolidate their investments at a personal level. So putting money in an automobile, I doubt very much whether somebody is going to move towards that, other than the past bookings.
Right. I think with that, we'll treat that as the last question, Professor Hariharan. We're already way past time. I know there's a lot of interest generated and many questions here. What we'll try and see is what it is that we send you post this presentation.
Please send the emails, I'll answer to them, no problem at all.
Yes, we'll try and do that.
I'll share my email address as well.
Yeah, so while he's doing that, thank you. They've been very effusive.
Take my email address, you can send my email as well. So that can definitely, I can answer your questions. I've given my contact details here.
All right, that's very kind. I must just let you know that there are very many effusive comments here for you, saying this was very informative, it was very meaningful, it was wonderful, and all of that. And like I said right at the start, you're all in for a really big treat with this very learned and very gifted teacher. So thank you so much, Professor Hariharan, for giving us your time, your energy, your enthusiasm, and such deep and valuable insights, including your own views on how you're connecting up the dots in these very difficult times. So thank you.
I attempted a crystal ball glazing, Sujaya. I just as a crystal ball glazing. Everything is definitely debatable. Whatever I said is debatable.
Yeah, but I think your views are just so, your meaning making and your views have just been so wonderful to listen to. And I'm hoping that there's infused a lot of optimism. I can see that a lot of comments spoke about your inherent optimism in this situation. So thank you for inspiring everyone with that. I think with that, we come to an end of this webinar. I hope you found it meaningful like the others that you've attended in the past couple of days. We have another webinar up tomorrow, around leadership traits. And this time around, we have Adil Malia, and he's going to take you through the entire conversation using his doodles. So don't miss this one, and log in again at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Very quickly, those who enjoy what we do and would like to know more about our virtual academy, please get in touch. And also those who are not yet members, enroll as members so that you can get more value-added services and get to know more about our learning resource centers and other opportunities for learning. So do get in touch with Prudel and with Tessin for more. One more time, more such interesting, insightful, meaningful, and timely webinars coming up in the next couple of days. We've got leadership traits, adversity moments by Adil Malia. That's tomorrow on the 6th of April. We've got personal branding and reinventing yourself in turbulent times by Rajesh Kumar from Singapore. We've got a mental health and happiness session from a mental health expert all the way from the UK, who's agreed to do this session for us. So this is a not to miss. And then, of course, later in the month, we've got an international speaker connecting from Spain, talking to you about how EQ can help you drive change in what is indisputably VUCA times. So I think with that, thank you, everyone. All the best, be safe, and see you at the next webinar tomorrow.